I never imagined I would be the kind of person to sit down and put my story into words. For most of my life, I believed in simple truths, that love should be loyal, that marriage was a vow not just of companionship but of integrity, and that betrayal was something that only happened to other people, weak people, careless people. But the truth, the one I am ashamed to admit, is that betrayal didn't just happen to me. I committed it. And worse, I committed it with my whole heart. My name is Daniel. I am 37 years old, and for more than a decade I was married to a woman I thought would be my forever. Her name is Emily. She's the kind of woman who turns heads without even trying, not because she was flashy or loud, but because she carried herself with quiet grace. She had chestnut hair that caught gold in the sunlight, eyes that were patient but sharp enough to notice everything, and a smile that made me feel like the luckiest man alive when it was aimed at me. When we first met in college, it was the kind of romance you think only happens in movies. I was 21, she was 19, and I thought no one on earth could match her wit. She laughed easily at my jokes, though in hindsight they weren't very good, and she had this way of making me believe I was capable of more than I actually was. I pursued a career in marketing because of her encouragement. She wanted to be a teacher, and she became one. We grew into adulthood side by side. Our wedding was modest but warm. Friends and family crammed into a small hall decorated with wildflowers. I remember how tightly she squeezed my hand when we exchanged vows, how certain she seemed that we were indestructible. At that moment, I believed it too. The first years were beautiful. We struggled with rent, made cheap dinners, stayed up too late watching shows on a hand-me-down television, and shared dreams about the future, a house, maybe children, vacations we couldn't yet afford. Over time, we built that future. We bought a small house with peeling paint and a backyard big enough for barbecues. Emily became the teacher who all her students adored. I climbed the ladder at work, slowly but steadily, until I was managing my own small team. But somewhere along the way, the spark between us, that fierce, undeniable pull, dulled into something quieter. Familiarity replaced passion. Our conversations turned more to grocery lists and schedules than dreams and desires. Sex became routine, sometimes absent altogether when she was too tired from grading papers or I was too drained from late nights at the office. Don't get me wrong, we weren't unhappy. At least, not in the way that movies dramatize. We didn't scream at each other, we didn't throw plates or slam doors. We were partners, teammates, friends. But there were nights when I lay awake beside her and wondered if friendship was all we had left. It was during one of those restless periods that I met Claire. Claire was everything Emily wasn't. Where Emily was calm and deliberate, Claire was impulsive and sharp-tongued. Where Emily preferred routine, Claire thrived on spontaneity. She worked in the same building as me, not in my department but close enough that our paths crossed often. She had this laugh, loud, unrestrained, unapologetic, and eyes that looked at you as if she could see the part of yourself you tried to keep hidden. The first real conversation we had wasn't even flirtatious. It was about coffee, of all things. She complained that the office machine produced something that tasted like burnt mud, and I joked that maybe the company was trying to poison us. She grinned and said, "If you're not careful, I might start believing you." From there, it was casual encounters. Coffee breaks, shared lunches in the cafeteria, a quick chat in the elevator. But I felt something dangerous each time I walked away, the faint tug of anticipation, the awareness of her presence lingering even after I returned to my desk. I told myself it was harmless. People were allowed to have friends at work. People were allowed to appreciate each other without crossing lines. I convinced myself of that lie for months. The moment it stopped being harmless happened one rainy Thursday. I had stayed late at the office to finish a presentation. Claire was there too, though I hadn't realized it until she appeared at my cubicle, hair slightly damp from the drizzle outside, holding 2 takeout containers. "You look like you're about to starve," she said, setting one down on my desk. I couldn't finish this alone. It was Thai food, my favorite. Emily didn't like spicy dishes, so I rarely ordered them at home. The first bite sent a warmth through me that wasn't just about the food. We ate, we laughed, and at some point our knees brushed beneath the table. She didn't move hers away. Neither did I. After that night, I thought about her constantly. I'd wake up beside Emily and wonder what Claire was doing. I'd answer Emily's questions with half my attention, the other half replaying conversations I'd had with Claire earlier that day. I started checking my phone more often, hoping for a text, an excuse to see her outside of work. The guilt was immediate and heavy. I loved Emily. I knew that. She was kind, dependable, and had given me years of her life. But Claire made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. Being near her was like touching fire, dangerous, impossible to ignore. The line finally broke on a Friday evening. Claire and I had gone out for drinks with a group from work. One by one, everyone else left until it was just the two of us in a dimly lit booth, nursing the last of our beers. She leaned in close, her voice low. "You know this isn't just friendship," she whispered. And I knew she was right. When her lips met mine, it wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, as if we'd both been starving and finally allowed ourselves to eat. I kissed her back with the same hunger, and in that moment, I stopped being the man I thought I was. That night, I drove home to Emily with the taste of Claire still on my lips. I crawled into bed beside my wife, her back turned to me, her breathing steady. I wanted to tell her everything, to beg for forgiveness before it went too far. But I didn't. Instead, I closed my eyes and let the lie settle like poison in my chest. It was the beginning of everything that followed, the passion, the deceit, the jealousy, the betrayal. And it was the beginning of the end of the man Emily thought she married. The first kiss should have been enough to stop me. To jolt me back to reality, to make me realize that I was standing on the edge of a cliff and that stepping forward would destroy everything I had built with Emily. But it didn't stop me. It only made me crave more. After that night, Claire and I didn't speak about what happened immediately. At work, we kept things professional, careful not to draw suspicion. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. Every time our eyes met across the office, the air grew heavier. Every word exchanged carried hidden meaning. A week later, she sent me a message late at night, "Are you awake?" I was lying in bed beside Emily when my phone buzzed. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity before typing back, "Yes." "Claire, I can't stop thinking about you." "Me, I can't stop either." My heart pounded so hard I thought Emily might wake from the sound alone. She stirred slightly, murmured something in her sleep, then turned over. I slipped out of bed and tiptoed into the living room to continue the conversation. We stayed up until nearly 3 in the morning, confessing all the things we had been pretending not to feel. She admitted she'd been drawn to me for months. I confessed how alive she made me feel. It was reckless, intoxicating, and terrifying. 2 days later, we met at a hotel. I can still remember the trembling in my hands as I knocked on the door, the way my throat tightened when she opened it and stood there in a simple black dress. She didn't say a word at first, she just pulled me inside, closed the door, and kissed me with the same hunger as that first night. Making love to Claire was unlike anything I had felt in years. With Emily, intimacy had become routine, comfortable, almost predictable. With Claire, it was raw, urgent, filled with a sense of danger that made every touch electric. When it was over, I lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, torn between guilt and exhilaration. "I shouldn't be here," I whispered. She turned to me, her fingers tracing my chest. "But you are." And that was the truth I clung to. I was there, and I wanted to be. The affair escalated quickly after that. We met whenever we could, lunch breaks, stolen hours after work, the occasional late-night rendezvous under the excuse of working late. I became an expert liar, weaving stories for Emily about deadlines, client dinners, and unexpected office emergencies. She trusted me completely. That trust cut me deeper than any confrontation could have. At home, I noticed her still trying. Emily would suggest a date night, cook my favorite meals, ask about my day with genuine interest. Each gesture was like a knife twisting in my chest. Yet, even as I hated myself for betraying her, I couldn't stay away from Claire. One evening, after another hurried excuse, I arrived at Claire's apartment to find her pacing the living room. She looked up at me with eyes that were a mix of fire and fear. "This isn't enough," she said. I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't want to just be your secret," she said, her voice trembling with restrained emotion. "I want more. I want you." Her words hit me like a tidal wave. Until then, I had convinced myself that we could keep things compartmentalized. Emily was my wife, Claire was my escape. But hearing her demand more forced me to confront what I had been avoiding. "I can't just walk away from my marriage," I said, though even as the words left my mouth, I wasn't sure if I believed them. Claire stepped closer, her hands gripping my shirt. "Do you love me?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. My silence was its own answer. She kissed me, fiercely, almost desperately, as if trying to pull the truth from my lips. And though I didn't say the words, I felt them burning inside me. The weeks that followed blurred into a whirlwind of passion and lies. I would hold Emily in bed, pretending to sleep, while my mind replayed every moment with Claire. I hated myself for it, yet I couldn't stop. The cracks began to show. Emily started to notice my distance. She asked why I was always tired, why I seemed distracted at dinner, why I spent so much time on my phone. I brushed her off with excuses, but her eyes told me she wasn't convinced. One Saturday morning, she confronted me. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm but firm, "is there someone else?" The question made my stomach drop. I froze, coffee mug halfway to my lips. I had rehearsed 1,000 lies in my head, but none of them came out. Instead, I shook my head quickly. "No, of course not," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. "I've just been stressed at work." She studied me for a long time, her expression unreadable. Finally, she nodded slowly. "All right." But I could tell she didn't believe me. The guilt grew heavier after that, but so did the intensity with Claire. It was as if the more Emily suspected, the more I clung to the danger of what I was doing. Every meeting with Claire felt like a rebellion against the life I had built, a reckless escape I couldn't resist. Then came the moment that would change everything. Claire looked at me one night as we lay tangled in her sheets. She brushed a hand over my face, her eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Leave her," she whispered. "Be with me." It wasn't the first time she had said it, but this time was different. There was no anger in her voice, no ultimatum. Just quiet hope. And for the first time, I let myself imagine it. A life with Claire. A life without Emily. That thought alone was a betrayal more profound than any kiss, any night in a hotel. Because it meant I wasn't just cheating on my wife's body anymore, I was cheating on her future, on the life we had promised to build together. And yet, the thought didn't repulse me. It tempted me. That was the moment I realized I was no longer just a man having an affair. I was a man on the verge of destroying everything. There's only so long you can juggle lies before they start to collapse in your hands. I used to believe I could balance both worlds, be a faithful husband in appearance, a passionate lover in secret. But the truth is, no one can live that way forever. Emily noticed the changes in me long before I was ready to admit them. She wasn't a fool. She was a woman who had lived beside me for over a decade. She knew my habits, my moods, the way my voice sounded when I was tired, stressed, or hiding something. And I was hiding everything. It began with the smallest cracks. The way I'd flinch when she touched my phone. The hollow excuses about late meetings that no longer added up. The distant look in my eyes when she tried to talk about our future. One night, she came into the living room where I was sitting with my laptop open. Claire's name had just lit up my phone with a message, and I had quickly turned it face down. Emily stood there for a long moment, arms crossed, watching me. "Daniel," she said quietly, "you're not here anymore. Even when you're in this house, you're somewhere else. With someone else." Her words cut straight through me. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the weight of guilt pressed down so heavily that my voice caught in my throat. All I managed was, "You're imagining things." But we both knew she wasn't. After that, Emily grew quieter. She didn't push me with questions. Instead, she withdrew into herself, moving through the house like a ghost. She cooked meals but ate little. She laughed less. She stopped reaching for my hand at night. It was as if she was already bracing herself for the truth I was too cowardly to admit. Meanwhile, Claire's demands grew stronger. "Why are you still there?" she asked one evening when I arrived at her apartment. She was pacing, her frustration palpable. "Why are you still pretending when we both know what you want?" "Because it's not that simple," I argued. "Emily's my wife. We have a life together. You can't just what?" Claire cut in sharply. "You can't just stop lying to her. You can't just stop using me in the shadows. God, Daniel, do you even realize what this feels like for me?" Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. It stunned me. Claire, who always seemed so fierce, so untouchable, was breaking too. "I'm in love with you," she whispered, almost angrily, as though the words themselves were a burden. "And I can't keep being your dirty little secret." Hearing those words should have filled me with joy. Instead, they filled me with panic. Because I realized that Claire wasn't content with stolen moments anymore. She wanted a life. She wanted all of me. And I didn't know if I was ready to give it. That night, when I drove home, Emily was sitting at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. She didn't look at me when I walked in. "You smell like perfume," she said flatly. My heart froze. I opened my mouth, scrambling for some pathetic excuse, but she finally turned her eyes to mine, and what I saw there stopped me, not anger, but sadness. A deep, tired sadness. "Don't bother lying," she said softly. "I can see it all over you." I wanted to confess everything right then, to fall to my knees and beg her forgiveness. But cowardice won again. I muttered something about work dinners, about sitting too close to a colleague. She didn't argue. She just nodded once, stood up, and walked past me without another word. The silence in our house after that was unbearable. Claire noticed it too. "She knows, doesn't she?" she asked one afternoon. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The strange thing about lies is that when one person stops believing them, the whole structure collapses. Emily didn't need proof anymore. She carried the truth in the way she looked at me, in the way she avoided my touch. And Claire, frustrated and desperate, pushed harder with each passing day. The tension between them existed even though they never met. It lived inside me, pulling me apart. When I was with Emily, I felt the crushing weight of betrayal. When I was with Claire, I felt the guilt of abandonment. There was no peace, no joy, just fleeting moments of passion followed by hours of regret. The breaking point came on a Sunday evening. Emily and I were supposed to have dinner with her parents. At the last minute, I lied, said I had to stay late for a project. Instead, I went to Claire's. But Emily, perhaps for the first time in her life, didn't take my excuse at face value. When I returned home late that night, she was waiting for me in the living room. The lights were dim, her expression unreadable. "How was work?" she asked quietly. "Busy," I lied, my voice too quick, too shallow. She held up her phone. My stomach dropped. "I called your office," she said. "They told me you left hours ago." The silence that followed was deafening. My face burned, my throat went dry, and for the first time, I couldn't summon another excuse. You don't even bother to hide it anymore, Emily whispered. Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with heartbreak. How long, Daniel? How long have you been betraying me? I opened my mouth, but the words stuck. I couldn't bring myself to say the truth aloud, because saying it would make it real. Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. You could have just told me. Instead, you made me feel like I was crazy. Do you know what that does to a person? I had no answer. For the first time in our marriage, Emily walked away from me. She went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and left me standing alone in the living room with nothing but my shame. And that night, as I sat there in the dark, the full weight of my choices pressed down on me. I had wanted both worlds, the stability of my marriage and the fire of my affair. But now, both were slipping through my fingers. I thought I had control. But in truth, I was losing everything. The days after Emily caught me in my lie were some of the darkest of my life. The air in the house grew heavy, suffocating. Every sound, the creak of the floorboards, the clink of dishes, the slam of a door, felt loaded with unspoken accusations. She didn't scream at me. She didn't throw things or demand explanations. Somehow, her silence was worse. It was the silence of someone who had already accepted a truth they didn't want to face. I tried to act normal. I still went to work, still asked about her day, still kissed her cheek before bed. But the gestures were hollow, and she no longer pretended not to notice. Meanwhile, Claire pressed harder. When are you going to tell her? She asked one evening. We were tangled together on her couch, the TV flickering in the background. I can't just drop everything and blow up my marriage overnight, I muttered. She pulled back, eyes blazing. You already blew it up, Daniel. You just haven't had the guts to admit it yet. Her words stung because they were true. I had already betrayed my vows. Staying married was no longer the same thing as keeping the marriage alive. But still, I hesitated. It wasn't just fear of hurting Emily, though that alone weighed on me. It was fear of regret. Fear that once the dust settled, once the passion cooled, I would look around at the wreckage of my old life and wonder if I had made the wrong choice. Claire, however, had no patience for my hesitation. She began to press ultimatums. If you don't tell her soon, I will, she threatened one night, her voice sharp with desperation. I looked at her in shock. You wouldn't. Her jaw tightened. Don't test me. That was when I realized Claire's love for me was no longer just a thrill, it was consuming her. She wanted me entirely, and she was willing to burn down my life to get it. At home, Emily's quietness shifted into something colder. She began coming home later, staying in her classroom after school, claiming she had work to finish. Sometimes she would slip into bed after midnight, her body turned firmly away from mine. I suspected she wanted me to feel the same emptiness she had been feeling. One evening, I found her sitting at the dining table with a glass of wine. Her eyes were red, her face pale. Daniel, she said, her voice steady, I need you to tell me the truth. No more lies. No more excuses. Are you in love with someone else? The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I wanted to deny it, to spin another story, but I couldn't. The look in her eyes demanded honesty. I don't know, I whispered. Her laugh was bitter, hollow. You don't know. Either you are, or you aren't. Tears burned in my eyes. It's complicated. Complicated, she repeated, slamming her glass onto the table so hard that wine splashed over the rim. You sleep with another woman, you lie to me, you look me in the eyes and say, everything's fine, and now you want me to believe it's just complicated. I had never seen her like that before. The calm, patient Emily I knew was gone. In her place was a woman whose heart I had torn apart. Do you love her? She asked again, her voice trembling but firm. I hesitated. And that hesitation was its own confession. Her shoulders sagged. She covered her face with her hands, and for the first time, I saw her break. Sobs racked her body, muffled against her palms. I wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but I knew my touch would only make it worse. When she finally lifted her head, her eyes were swollen, her cheeks streaked with tears. "If you want her, Daniel, then go. But don't keep me here in this prison of half-truths." Her words should have freed me, but they shackled me instead. Because suddenly I realized I didn't want to lose her. Not entirely. Not like this. The next day, I tried to talk to Claire. "I need time," I told her. "Emily knows now. She's hurting. I can't just leave her like this." Claire's face darkened. "Time. I've given you time, Daniel. Months of it. And what do I get? Sneaking around, hiding like some dirty secret." Her voice rose, her hands trembling as she gestured wildly. "You said you wanted me. You said I made you feel alive. And now, when you finally have the chance to choose me, you're hesitating." I reached for her, but she pulled away. "I won't wait forever," she hissed. "If you can't give me all of you, then maybe you don't deserve me at all." The words echoed in my head long after I left her apartment. For days, I felt trapped between two worlds. Emily, broken but still holding on to some thread of hope that I might choose her. Claire, furious and desperate, demanding I prove my love by leaving my marriage. And me, a coward, standing in the middle, paralyzed by my own indecision. The breaking point came when Emily found a message on my phone. I had been careless, leaving it unlocked on the kitchen counter while I showered. By the time I came out, she was sitting on the couch, holding my phone in her hands, her face pale and expressionless. The message was simple. "From Claire, I need you tonight. I can't stand being apart anymore." Emily looked at me, her eyes hollow. "So it's true. All of it." I opened my mouth, but she raised a hand to silence me. "I don't want excuses," she said. Her voice was eerily calm, as if something inside her had finally gone numb. "I want you to leave. Tonight." And just like that, the life I had known was over. When Emily told me to leave, I thought she was bluffing. I thought maybe she just wanted to shock me into honesty. But when she stood up, walked upstairs, and returned with a suitcase she had packed for me, I realized she wasn't bluffing at all. Her hands were trembling, her face streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. "Go. Be with her. You already chose her the moment you kissed her." I tried to speak, to beg, to explain, but the words caught in my throat. All I managed was a pathetic, "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix betrayal," she whispered, then turned away. So I left. With one suitcase, my keys, and the crushing weight of what I'd done pressing against my chest. I drove aimlessly for a while, too ashamed to go straight to Claire's. Eventually, though, I had nowhere else to go. When she opened the door and saw me standing there with my bag, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me inside and kissed me like I had finally made the choice she'd been begging for. At first, it felt like freedom. No more lies, no more sneaking around. Claire and I could be together openly, without shame. She made me breakfast in the mornings, left notes on the bathroom mirror, curled up against me at night with a smile that said, "You're mine now." But freedom has a strange way of exposing truths you don't want to face. Living with Claire was different than the affair had been. There was no longer the thrill of stolen moments, no longer the adrenaline rush of secrecy. Now it was dishes in the sink, bills on the counter, mornings when one of us woke up cranky and didn't want to talk. Passion still burned between us, but it was tempered by the reality of everyday life. And then there was Emily. Even though she told me to leave, I couldn't stop thinking about her. I'd catch myself wondering if she was eating, if she was sleeping, if she was crying herself to sleep in the bed we once shared. The guilt gnawed at me, relentless. Sometimes I almost reached for my phone to call her, to hear her voice, but I never did. Claire noticed. "You're still thinking about her," she said one night, her voice sharp. "I hurt her," I admitted. "You don't just stop caring about someone you spent more than a decade with." Her eyes narrowed. "So what am I? A consolation prize?" "No," I said quickly. "You're the one I chose. You're the one I want." But even as I said it, doubt whispered in the back of my mind. Did I really choose her, or did I just get caught? The cracks in our new life began to show quickly. Claire wanted me to cut Emily off completely. "You don't owe her anything," she argued. "She'll move on. We both will." But it wasn't that simple. Emily wasn't just some ex-girlfriend I could delete from my phone. She was my wife. She was the woman who had built a life with me, who had stood by me when I was struggling, who had loved me when I didn't deserve it. The tension between Claire and me grew sharper every time her name came up. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after I left, Emily called. I almost didn't answer, but my chest tightened when I saw her name on the screen. Her voice was quiet, almost formal. "Daniel, I need you to come by the house. There are things of yours you left behind." When I arrived, she had packed several boxes for me. Clothes, books, little pieces of my old life. She didn't invite me in. She didn't smile. She just handed me the boxes and stood in the doorway like a stranger. "Emily," I started, my throat tight. She looked at me then, and her eyes were full of something that broke me more than her tears ever did, indifference. "Don't," she said. "Just take your things." I wanted to tell her I loved her. I wanted to beg for another chance. But she closed the door before I could. When I returned to Claire's with the boxes, she noticed my silence immediately. "What happened?" She looked right through me, I admitted, my voice cracking. Like I was nothing. Instead of comforting me, Claire's jaw tightened. "Good. That's what you wanted, isn't it? A clean break." Her words stung. Because as much as I told myself I had chosen Claire, part of me still longed for Emily's forgiveness. The jealousy grew worse over time. Claire became suspicious whenever I so much as checked my phone. If it buzzed, she demanded to know who it was. If I left the apartment, she wanted to know where I was going, who I was meeting, when I'd be back. One night, after another argument, she snapped, "If you're so miserable here, why don't you just go crawling back to her?" I didn't answer. And my silence was louder than any words could have been. That was when I realized I had destroyed one life and built another on quicksand. Because no matter how much I tried to convince myself otherwise, I was haunted by the woman I had betrayed, and the woman I had chosen was beginning to see it too. Life with Claire was supposed to feel like a victory. She had fought for me, begged me to leave, promised me a future full of fire and passion. And in the beginning, it felt almost like that, intoxicating, raw, alive. But the longer we lived together, the more the cracks widened. Claire wanted my full devotion, but what she got instead was a fractured man who kept glancing over his shoulder at the life he had burned down. She knew it. She felt it. And she resented it. "Do you still love her?" she asked one night, out of nowhere. We were lying in bed, the glow of the city spilling through the blinds. I stared at the ceiling, knowing that whatever I said would be wrong. "I don't know," I admitted. She sat up sharply. "Don't know? How can you not know? You left her for me, Daniel. You ruined everything for me. And you don't even know." Her words were like daggers. "I didn't leave her for you," I whispered. "I left because I got caught." The second those words left my mouth, I regretted them. Claire's face crumpled, her eyes blazing with hurt and fury. "So what am I, then?" she spat. "A consolation prize? The woman you settled for after you destroyed your marriage?" I tried to take her hand, but she ripped it away. That night, she slept on the couch, and the silence between us was louder than any shouting could have been. The weeks dragged on, heavy with tension. Every argument circled back to Emily. Claire accused me of longing for her, of checking her social media, of secretly hoping she would call. Sometimes she was right. I did wonder. I did scroll through old pictures. I did imagine what Emily was doing without me. And then, one evening, I saw it for myself. I had driven past our old house, a reckless, stupid impulse I couldn't explain. And there she was. Emily, stepping out onto the porch with someone else. A man. Tall, confident, with his hand resting lightly on her back as if it belonged there. I froze behind the wheel, my chest constricting. She laughed at something he said, a soft, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in years. It wasn't forced. It wasn't pained. It was free. For the first time since the affair began, I felt something new, jealousy. I had no right to feel it. I had broken her, abandoned her, left her with nothing but lies. But seeing her smile for someone else ripped me apart in a way I hadn't expected. That night, when I told Claire, she didn't comfort me. She smirked. "Good," she said coldly. "Now you know how it feels." Her bitterness shocked me. "Claire, don't you understand?" I stopped myself, but it was too late. She heard the words I almost said. "You still love her," she finished for me, her voice trembling with rage. "Even after everything, you'd run back to her if she let you." I couldn't deny it. The fights escalated after that. Claire grew paranoid, watching me like a hawk. If I left the apartment, she demanded to know where I went. If my phone buzzed, she demanded to see it. When I resisted, she accused me of planning to crawl back to Emily. One night, after a particularly vicious argument, she screamed, "You don't deserve either of us," and threw a glass against the wall, shattering it into pieces. I realized then that the passion I had mistaken for love was turning into something darker, something suffocating. What had once felt thrilling now felt like a cage. And all the while, Emily's image haunted me. Not the Emily I had left, broken and betrayed, but the Emily I had glimpsed on the porch, laughing with someone new. She was moving on. Healing. Finding light again. And me? I was stuck in the shadows of my own choices. One morning, I woke before Claire. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the mess of our lives, empty wine glasses, unpaid bills, the remnants of another fight. I thought about the man I used to be, the man Emily had fallen in love with. I thought about the vows I had spoken on our wedding day, promises I had shattered. And for the first time, I allowed myself to say it out loud, I ruined everything. The words echoed in the empty apartment. I ruined my marriage. I ruined Emily's trust. I ruined Claire's chance at a love that wasn't poisoned by lies. And in the end, I ruined myself. Because no matter which woman I chose, the truth remained the same: betrayal leaves scars that no love can heal. Living with Claire became unbearable. What started as passion had curdled into obsession, jealousy, and constant suspicion. Every word I spoke was dissected, every action questioned. If I came home late, she assumed I was with Emily. If I went quiet, she accused me of dreaming about her. And she wasn't entirely wrong. Because the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about Emily. Not in the way I used to, not with longing for her touch or fantasies of winning her back. It was different now. It was regret, heavy and suffocating. It was the knowledge that I had thrown away the one person who had truly loved me. Claire felt that absence every day. One evening, after another screaming match that left both of us raw, she collapsed onto the couch, tears streaking her face. "Why did you come to me, Daniel? Why did you make me believe I was enough when you never let go of her?" Her words were a knife. I sat across from her, exhausted, my voice hoarse. Because I was weak. Because I wanted everything. And now I have nothing. She stared at me with eyes that had once burned with desire but now smoldered with hatred. You destroyed me too, you know. I gave you everything, and still you kept her ghost between us. The silence after that was final. Something inside both of us broke that night. A week later, I got a message from Emily. Not a call, not a plea, not a second chance. Just a short, clipped message: please don't contact me anymore. I've moved on. I need peace. I stared at it for a long time, my heart twisting. There was no anger in her words, no bitterness. Just finality. She had moved on. I hadn't. And that was my punishment. Claire's jealousy didn't cool after that, it worsened. If anything, Emily's silence made her more paranoid. She wanted reassurance, constant proof that she had won. But what she didn't understand was that nobody had won. Our apartment became a battlefield. Words were weapons, silence was poison. One night, she locked herself in the bedroom and screamed through the door, "I hate you, Daniel. I hate what you turned me into." I sat on the floor in the hallway, head in my hands, realizing she was right. She wasn't the same woman I had fallen into an affair with. And I wasn't the same man who once believed he could balance two worlds. The affair had transformed us, not into lovers bound by fate, but into enemies trapped by guilt. The breaking point came on a cold Thursday evening. I had just returned from work when Claire confronted me, her eyes blazing. "I know you still love her," she hissed. "I see it in your face every time you think I'm not looking. You'll never love me the way you loved her." I didn't argue. For the first time, I didn't try to deny or soothe. I just said the words I should have said long ago: "You're right." Her face crumpled. She slapped me across the chest with both fists, sobbing, furious, devastated. "Then why are you here? Why don't you leave?" I didn't have an answer. That night, I packed a bag. I left without a destination, without a plan. Just the crushing realization that I had lost both women, one to betrayal, the other to the toxic aftermath of it. For weeks, I drifted. A rented room, silent nights, meals eaten alone. I thought about calling Emily, but I respected her wish for peace. I thought about apologizing to Claire, but what good would it do? Apologies can't rebuild trust once it's been burned to ash. The truth was simple: I was alone. Not because of bad luck. Not because of circumstances. Because of me. I had chosen desire over loyalty, passion over love, lies over honesty. And in the end, all I had left was myself, the one person I could never escape. Sometimes I drive past Emily's street, though I never stop. I see her lights on through the windows, sometimes hear faint laughter carried by the night air. Maybe it's the new man. Maybe it's her friends. Maybe it's just her, laughing at some show, finally free of me. And Claire? I don't know where she is now. Last I heard, she quit her job, moved to another city. Maybe she's rebuilding. Maybe she's still angry. Maybe both. But me? I'm living with the consequences. The weight of betrayal. The knowledge that the life I once had, a wife who loved me, a home filled with trust, is gone because of choices I made. And the bitter truth is this: sometimes you don't get redemption. Sometimes the damage is too deep, the scars too permanent. Sometimes, you just live with the ruins. Months turned into a year. Time, they say, heals all wounds. But the truth is, it doesn't heal, it only dulls the edges, softens the sharpness of regret. The scars remain. I learned to live alone. My rented room became an apartment, sparsely furnished, quiet. Work filled most of my days, and silence filled my nights. I stopped checking Emily's street, stopped glancing at my phone hoping for Claire's name. Eventually, the obsession faded, but the emptiness remained. There's a difference between being lonely and being alone. I had been lonely in my marriage, even before Claire. I had been lonely in the affair, surrounded by passion but starving for peace. Now, I was simply alone. And in that solitude, I began to see myself clearly. For the first time in years, I couldn't hide behind excuses or distractions. There was no Emily to absorb my flaws, no Claire to distract me from them. Just me, and the truth I had been avoiding. I had betrayed not only the people I loved, but the man I once wanted to be. One rainy afternoon, fate gave me a moment I hadn't expected. I ran into Emily at a bookstore. I almost didn't recognize her at first, not because she had changed drastically, but because she looked lighter, stronger, happier. She saw me before I could turn away. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, I thought she might ignore me. But she didn't. She walked over, a faint, polite smile on her lips. "Daniel," she said softly. Hearing my name from her felt strange, familiar yet distant. "Emily," I whispered. My throat was dry. "You look good." She nodded. "I am." There was no bitterness in her tone, no anger. Just calm. Peace. We spoke for a few minutes, small talk, nothing more. She told me she was seeing someone, and though it hurt, I managed to smile. She didn't owe me that detail, but perhaps she wanted me to know she was okay. When we parted, she touched my arm lightly. "Take care of yourself, Daniel." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was closure. And that was enough. Claire was a different story. I never saw her again. Sometimes I wondered where she went, whether she found someone who could love her without ghosts in the way. I hoped so, even if I didn't deserve to. Because despite everything, I didn't hate her. She wasn't the villain in my story, nor was Emily. The villain was me. These days, I live quietly. No dramatic romances, no tangled webs of passion and betrayal. I read, I work, I take long walks. I think. And I've come to understand something simple but brutal: love is not just about passion. It's not about excitement or escape. It's about loyalty. Patience. Choosing someone even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I failed at that. I chose the thrill over the truth, the flame over the foundation. And in doing so, I lost the one person who truly loved me. But perhaps my story can be more than just regret. Perhaps it can be a reminder. If you love someone, fight for them when things get dull. When routine sets in, when silence replaces laughter, when desire fades into familiarity, that is when love demands its deepest strength. Because if you don't fight for it, someone else will. And by the time you realize what you've lost, it may already be gone. I don't know if redemption is possible for me. I don't know if I'll ever find love again. But I do know this: I will never again take someone's trust and turn it into ashes. I will never again mistake passion for love. I will never again betray the person I claim to cherish. Emily has moved on. Claire has disappeared. And I remain, a man marked by mistakes, but still breathing, still learning, still hoping that one day I'll be worthy of the word love again. Until then, I live with my confession. My name is Daniel. And this is the story of how I betrayed everything that mattered, and what it cost me.